Hello, welcome back to another edition on Chessbox Worldwide. Tonight I'll be analyzing a game played between Abdul Mohamed Warsame and CM Oluka Robert Mcligeyo, which was played during the Zone 4.4 Chess Championship, which took place in Kenya. These are both reigning national champions from Somalia and Kenya respectively. And this zone has the following countries, as you can see in the photo. In history, this is the zonal event with the least number of participants. It only had 10 participants, of which 8 players were from Kenya, 1 from South Sudan, and 1 from Somalia. So about the players, Robert Oluka Mcligeyo is the reigning 2024 Kenyan national champion. This title won him a car from Chess Kenya. He also represented Kenya in the 45th Chess Olympiad, Budapest, Hungary, where he scored 4.5 out of 9 points, which enabled him attain the candidate master title. He also plays for KCB Chess Club from Kenya. He is the highest rated Kenyan player in the country, while Abdul Mohamed Warsame is the reigning 2024 Somalia national chess champion, and he also won the 2024 Africa Amateurs Individual Chess Championships in the under 2000 section with 7.5 out of 9 points, having suffered the only loss of the event to Uganda's Jimmy Balewa in round 5. This achievement gave him a conditional candidate master title, which requires him to reach 2000 elos in FIDE rating, and he is the reigning Zone 4.4 chess champion 2025. Ladies and gentlemen, let the fireworks begin. So in the white pieces, Warsame opened the game with 1d4, and the candidate master Oluka Robert played knight f6. So he went on to play knight f3. The knight f3 stops all those funny gambits. So in this position, he went on and played e6. And now bishop e7 is being anticipated, then short castling, e3, opening up for the bishop to sit on d3 and then short castling. And after c5, now he went on to play bishop d3. Now this introduces us to the Cole system. In this position, white is planning to go ahead and play b3, put the bishop on b2, and now you see that the bishops will be putting an eye on the king side of black. So he went on and played knight c6, planning to bring the knight on b4 and attack the bishop on d3 so that it can be eliminated. Warsame played a3, stopping the knight jump, and he was ready now to go for short castling. So after bishop e7, in this position, for example, Warsame went ahead and played short castling. But however, in case of d takes c5, e5, threatened to go ahead and fork the bishop and the knight. So in this position, after knight comes to b2, and now a5, stopping any b4 ideas. And after c4, bishop takes c5, b3. Now we are planning to put the bishop on b2 as the plan goes on, d6, and now bishop b2. Let's go back. D takes c5, and black plays bishop takes c5. Now white gets a slight advantage in the position and the tempo move. He can play b4, opening up the bishop to be put on this diagonal. After bishop e7, bishop comes to b2. I can tell you at least white has a slight advantage in the position. Let's go back. After bishop e7, Warsame played short castling, and also the candidate master Oluka Robert played short castling. b3, going on the plan to put the bishop on b2 and then can put all the eyes on the king side. Rook b8. Now he's planning to go ahead and push the queen side pawns. Queen e2, stopping the immediate b5. In case of b5, then the bishop can take off the bishop d5 pawn. So he played d5. Now, after playing d5, Warsame developed another piece. He played knight bd2, stopping any further advancements. a6 was played, then bishop b2. Now you see that the bishop has been put on this beautiful diagonal. The bishop is also putting an eye on h7, and I can tell you white is now good to go. Played b5, emphasizing pawn c4 to trap the bishop. That's why we see pawn takes, bishop takes. You see how the bishop is very open and is ready to attack. So in this position, white played b4. But however, in case of e4 would be the best move in the position, because after d takes e4, knight takes e4, requesting for an exchange and also attacking the bishop on c7. Knight d4. Then we see knight takes f in check, and after queen takes f6, we can see knight takes d4. And after bishop takes d4, before even you go ahead and take the bishop, then queen can come on e4, and after queen comes to e4, threatening checkmate in 1 and attacking the bishop on d4. And after rook comes to d8, creating running squares for the king. Now we see that the queen can go ahead and win the pawn on h7, at the same time try to gain a little bit of advantage. Let's go back. b4, cutting off all these squares in case of knight jumps. So the CM played bishop e7, but however bishop comes to a7 should have been considered. So he played bishop e7. e4 was played. Finally, queen c7 should have been considered, putting an eye on the e5 square. But however, the candidate master played bishop e7, which was a dubious move in the position. This prompted Warsame to play e5, trying to attack the knight and fixing the pawn on e5. Now for knight d7, he played knight b3. Knight b3 is a good move because now it is trying to secure a square where the knight can sit, and also stopping the immediate pawn a5 moves. Also those can be stopped. So he played queen c7. Now you start the knights and the queen are looking at the pawn which is on e5. And in this position, Warsame played rook comes to e1. Now he's very ready to secure this square on e5 with this pawn. Candidate master played a5, trying to attack the weak spots. Because of the interesting rook comes to c8, then h4 would be played, and in case of knight comes to b6, it would be a very powerful move because now you see that this knight can always come in on c4 and it can attack the bishop which is on b2. You see that the knight will be attacking the bishop on b2. At the same time, a3. Let's go back, facing the pawn which is on b5. Let's look at all the variations. For example, in case of bishop takes b5, then a takes b4. You see that the knight and the bishop are attacking the pawn which is on b4, and after f4, trying to still maintain the pawns on the queen side, then knight would come on b6. And after knight comes to b6, in case of the immediate a5, then black would play knight c4, attacking the bishop which is on b2, at the same time attacking the pawn which is on a5. And after bishop takes c4, d takes c4, pawn is attacking the knight which is on b3. So queen is forced, queen takes c4, and after queen c4, you can see that knight comes to f d4, and in this position, you can see that at least black has slight advantage in the position with so many moves which can be played. The rook can always come in, the bishop can always come in, and all these are all threats which can be thought of. And I can tell you, I don't know how white can manage to jump out of it. Let's go back. After knight comes to b6, in this position, in case of rook comes to a1, protecting the pawn, now knight can come on a7, attacking the bishop. After bishop d3, knight c4, bishop comes c1. Remember, the knight was attacking the bishop on b2. Knight comes c6, knight g5. We see now that the bishop and the knight attacking the pawn. So h6, f4, sacrificing the knight. And in this position, after h takes g5, queen comes to h5, threatening checkmate in 1. And in case of any pawn pushes, then the bishop can take on the pawn which is on g6, and the rest can be history. That's why f5 could be tried. E takes f6, and then after rook takes f6, queen comes to h7 check, king f8, then queen h8 check, king f7, then the immediate queen h5 check, g6, and after bishop takes g6, rook takes g6, queen comes to h7 check, and after rook comes to g7, f takes g5. You see that now the rook has opened up itself. The king can't get anywhere close to the rook, and I tell the next move the queen will be taking the rook. So in this position, white would be winning the position. So let's go back. After pawn a5, in this position, c3, strengthening his pawn, because you would say that the knight and the bishop were putting eyes, and now he was ready to go ahead and win the pawn, which was on b5. So in this position, the candidate master Oluka played bishop comes to a6, defending his pawn with the rook and the bishop, and now Warsame played knight comes to d4, trying to put the knights where they're supposed to be, in the center of the board, and after knight comes to a7, declining the next exchange. That was an interesting move, and the candidate master would resign immediately in this game. Warsame missed a winning combination, because the winning combination would begin with takes e6, and after f takes e6, then knight d4, attacking the pawn which is on e6 and threatening to fork the queen and the rook, and in the case of queen b6, defending the pawn which is on e6, then queen h5. You see that the bishop and the queen are all attacking the pawn which is on h7 and threatening to checkmate the black king. So rook f5 could be played, because in case of energy 6 previously, the bishop could just take on the pawn. Bishop takes, and after e takes, then we see e6. Now e6 is attacking the knight, at the same time opening up the queen check, opening up for the queen check. At the same time, pawn push can be seen, opening up for the bishop. All those are winning tactics. So in case of knight comes to f6, attacking the queen, then queen f7, check, and after king comes to h8, knight takes f5, attacking the bishop, at the same time threatening to checkmate, and after bishop f8, pawn e7, and then black is supposed to resign. Let's go back. After knight a7, Warsame missed knight comes to e6, and he was winning on the spot. He played knight comes to d2, another simple calm move. g6, trying to cut off the bishop diagonal from there and also stop the queen h5 idea. So f4 was played. Now we are moving forward to attack the king side, and also remember that the queen and the knight have been putting eyes on the pawn which is on e5. So we are trying to see a way of how we can open up for the black bishop. So knight comes to c6, and he played knight f3. In case of knight takes, then the knight can still take back. So knight takes d4, knight takes d4. And in this position, queen b6 was played, pinning down the knight against the king. So we see king h1, a prophylactic move, and after bishop comes to h4, g3 was played. Remember, the bishop was attacking the rook. And after bishop comes to e7, he played g4. Now g4, it is emphasizing the pawn f5 threat. Bishop comes back to h4, trying to have a repetition of moves. Then rook comes to a1, moving away from the bishop attack. And after bishop e7, now he played f5. So in this position, the candidate master played e takes f5, but however, even if you could try a move like queen comes to c7, then f6, and after bishop comes to d8, rook comes into e1. Now the queen is planning to just sit anywhere on e3 and then can come in to checkmate. So we see h6 could be played, queen comes to e3, king comes to h7 to defend the pawn on h6, and after bishop c1, giving more power to the queen to take the pawn which is on h6. This could call in for the bishop to take the pawns so that black can see a way of survival, and I can tell you black will be busted. Let's go back. After f5, candidate master tried e takes f5, and Warsame played g takes f5. Now he's very ready to go ahead and push the pawns to attack the black camp. So in this position, he went on and played rook comes to e8, and in this position, Warsame played pawn takes f5, trying to deflect the queen from this column and try to move it afar to take the pawn on f5, of which the candidate master declined, and he played queen b8. So let's go back. In the case of queen d8, trying to still put eyes on the then on this diagonal, then f4 could be played. Remember, if pawn takes, then the bishop can be taken on s6. So after bishop comes to d6, remember the pawn which is on f5 has been pinned down by the rook, and after a takes b5, you see now the 2 pawns have been connected. Rook takes e5, queen comes to g2, moving away the queen from the attack of the rook. Then we would see bishop comes to b7, and after a6, bishop a8. I can tell you the rest could be history. Let's go back. Queen comes to b8, and e6 was played. So in e6, we are attacking the knight at the same time trying to open up the king side. So in this position, in case of the candidate master played knight c5, but in case of f takes e6, it will be a blunder, because after queen takes e6, king goes to h8. Even we don't have time to win the knight which is on d7, we could just play f takes g6, opening up the position for the pieces to come in, and also trying to open up all these squares where that the bishop can always come in to checkmate the white king. And in this position, there are many ways on how black can proceed. In case of the first rook comes to f6, then now white could play queen takes knight, and after queen comes to c8, queen takes c8, rook takes c8, and then g takes h7, and after bishop comes to b7, rook takes f6, bishop takes f6, then rook comes to f1, attacking the bishop on f6, bishop comes to e5, rook f7, attacking the bishop which is on b7, bishop s6, and now rook comes to a7, b4 would be played, rook takes a6, and b takes c3, then bishop takes c3, because you can't take the bishop because of the rook check, and now rook can come on check, and then queen can be put on the board, and I can tell you there is no way black could survive. Let's go back. After f takes g6, still in case of queen comes to e5, then the immediate queen would come to h3, threatening checkmate in 1, and after rook takes f1, rook takes f1, h5, avoiding the checkmate, then knight comes c6, forking the queen. And remember, if this is the diagonal which wants to be open, and if the queen has to keep an eye on this diagonal. So in case of queen g7, then queen takes d7, attacking the rook which is on e8, at the same time also attacking the bishop. Let's go back. After e6, the candidate master tried knight comes to c5, trying to put an eye on their e6 square, at the same time attacking the bishop which is on d3. Then Warsame played f6. In case of pawn takes, then the bishop will be taken. So in case of bishop takes, then the rook can still take the pawn, and the rest can be history. So in case of bishop comes to d6, then e7, it will be winning the rook by far. So after f6, the candidate master tried to play f takes, pawn takes, and in this position, rook takes f1, and now rook takes f1. So the immediate rook takes e7 is prohibited because of knight comes to c6, forking the queen and the rook, and that would be very dangerous for the candidate master. So after rook takes f1, candidate master Oluka tried queen comes to d6, and after bishop takes b5, in this position the bishop is attacking the bishop on a6, at the same time attacking the rook which is on e8, bishop takes, and then knight takes, attacking the queen, and after queen takes e7, c4 was played, opening up for the bishop is willing to come and play queen comes to e5. That's why knight comes to e4, and in this position our c takes, and now e takes, we played queen d3, threatening to take the pawn on d5 check, putting the queen on d4 so that it can forge a battery. So we see knight comes to c5, attacking the queen, and after queen check, now you see that queen check, the king has nowhere to go. This diagonal is covered by the bishop. This diagonal, this column is taken on by the rook. So it means the only piece they can try to put there. And remember, the queen is still putting an eye on the knight which is on c5. So the only piece they had to put in the war was knight comes to e6. And in this position, Warsame played knight comes to e6, attacking the rook, at the same time securing the b7 square to avoid any checks from the queen. So in this position, he tried to play rook comes to f8, and after rook takes f8, king takes f8, he played queen e5, and I can tell you the game is busted. Remember, this square is being taken on by the knights, and these squares are taken on by the bishop and the queen even can't have a check because it could be taken by the knight. That was the essence of the knight to sit on d6, and I can tell you in this position the only move you can try to play to survive in the game is knight comes to g7, but after a6 I can tell you that the game will still be busted. So after queen e5, the candidate must have tried queen comes to d7, trying to come in to give these constant checks on the king, but he had forgotten that he was playing Warsame from Somalia, the reigning Somalia 2024 chess champion and the reigning African individual amateurs champion 2024. Here in this position, Warsame played queen f6, and you see that now the knight is watching over the two squares. The queen is watching all. The only square they have is playing king coming to g8, and now the immediate queen h8 would be a checkmate. That's why in this position played king g8, and after queen h8 was a checkmate, and Warsame Mohamed became the champion. Thank you so much for watching my channel, and I wish you the best of luck in your games.